Hi, I'm Hannah. Welcome to my channel. I am talking today about a webinar that I just attended from Sage and Sense About Science about the need for public good curators. And I wasn't planning on making a YouTube video about this webinar. I go to a lot of different types of webinars and workshops and things like that. But while I was in that specific webinar, listening to these really interesting, diverse speakers, I realized that YouTube exists as a repository for public good information, which is kind of weird because YouTube is a private business owned by Google and blah, blah, blah. But like the functionality of YouTube effectively creates a repository for information, especially science. And I feel like that warrants further conversation. And what our job as, I call myself a YouTube creator, even though I have 21 followers and I'm not exactly on YouTube as a creator yet, and I'm not known, but my goal as a YouTube creator is to be able to offer some type of authentic scholarship and guidance on how to navigate these spaces, especially serving kind of as a middle of the road person from academia to the layman. And there are these kind of pejorative, and I say pejorative, there are these condescending viewpoints about people doing research, especially doing their own research. And it's definitely something that's been weaponized by groups to make you feel like if you don't have their opinion, then you haven't done your own research yet. And that isn't just isolated to current political groups. That is something that I think all types of people and groups of people do. Academics are particularly bad about these really high point barriers to entry of whether or not you have the right degree from the right school and you've studied under the right people, and have you read the right research, have you read the seminal texts. They're just as bad as anyone else. So don't think that this is just a kind of a Reddit way of expressing an opinion by saying, well, have you done your research yet? Anyway, I digress. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about for this specific YouTube as a curation tool idea is that as public good curators, in this webinar earlier, they talked about public good curators maintain a certain type of ethics, rigor, quality standard, and an additional pillar is duty bound. So for me, working in higher education, I'm duty bound by the College of Medicine and by my department that my PhD is through to behave in ethical ways and to communicate in scientifically sound ways, especially for students and for the public. That is an essential component of my job. It is not an essential component of everyone's job. But if you work in higher education or education in general, ethics is absolutely woven into our positions, and it's woven into what our goals are as public facing people. We are publicly facing students, even at private schools, because our work isn't being siloed. Our work manifests through students and through academic settings. And because of that, the duty bound aspect of this is actually really important, because I don't think that all public good curators are necessarily duty bound, especially if you look at something like YouTube as a repository of having any kind of duty. Should we? Yes. But is it actually prevalent? No. And I think that's an important distinction, because I don't think that the standards for what is considered ethical or scientifically sound or rigorous, that doesn't exist in YouTube as a platform or as a repository. However, as public good curators, we can take our positions that we exist in our spaces. Ignore my Johan Vasquez t-shirt, if you know, you know. We can take our positions at institutions or at think tanks or at organizations or at wherever we work, that we are duty bound, and apply that same set of standards and same rigor to YouTube as a repository for ideas. And that's kind of where I think I'm at. That this webinar, they kind of briefly touched on it, but they didn't say that people who navigate these spaces, when they disseminate their work, to maintain and carry those expectations through to the end. And I think that's what was missing and what's been on my mind and what I wanted to say. So in summary, the role of the public good curator as someone who observes science and research, and that's not limited to the hard sciences. If you observe any kind of research, that you are a steward of that research, if it's your own research especially, and when you put it out there, especially on a platform like YouTube or even Substack, whatever you're on to disseminate your research, maintaining your standards of rigor, especially if you're in a university position or an institution position, organization position, and you're duty bound to maintain those ethics, to continue that on. I think most of us would do that, but I feel like that's also something that just needs to be said out loud. Anyway, those are my thoughts on higher education today and YouTube as a public good repository, which I think we should start thinking of it as a public good repository. So thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.